Princess Aelira had been taught since childhood that marriage was a weapon. Among the Velkar, royal blood did not choose love. It chose survival. Alliances were sealed with vows, not trust, and promises were backed by fleets, not faith. So when the High Council told her she would marry a human to stop a war, she did not cry. She only nodded and asked when the ceremony would take place. The war had already begun in every way except open fire. Humanity had crossed into Velkar-controlled space only 30 cycles ago. A young species, loud on the diplomatic channels, stubborn in negotiations, and strangely united for a people without a single ruler. Many empires had laughed at them. Others had prepared to consume them. The Velkar Dominion chose a different path. They demanded submission. Humanity refused. That refusal alone was enough to alarm the High Council. Small species did not refuse ancient empires. They negotiated, delayed, or surrendered. Humans did none of those things. They simply stated they would defend themselves and their allies and then went silent. Silence, Aelira learned, was never a good sign. Scouts reported human fleets repositioning, not toward Velkar borders but inward. Colonies hardened their defenses. Trade ships vanished into protected routes. Civilian traffic slowed then stopped. It looked less like fear and more like preparation. That was when the human ambassador proposed marriage. Not tribute, not territory, marriage. One bond between one human officer and one Velkar royal to seal peace under an old interstellar custom older than both species. The council argued for days. Some called it humiliating. Others called it a trick. In the end, they agreed. Because the alternative was war with a species that did not act like prey. And so Princess Aelira was chosen. Now she stood inside a Velkar transport ship, staring out at the stars, her hands folded calmly while her heart beat slow and steady. Fear was useless. She would not shame her bloodline by trembling over a human male she had never met. Still, the stories followed her. Humans were predators. Humans were chaotic. Humans ate flesh and laughed during battle. Humans had no honor, only rules written to be broken. Aelira memorized them all. Knowledge was armor. The ship entered human-controlled space without challenge. No warning shots. No aggressive scans. Only a polite signal requesting identification and offering navigation assistance. That alone unsettled her escorts. Human space was quiet. There were no massive war fleets blocking lanes, no glowing threat displays. Stations were functional, almost plain, built for use rather than beauty. Traffic moved smoothly without ceremony. They arrived above Earth, the human homeworld. Aelira expected a fortress. Instead, she saw blue oceans, wide continents, and cities that glowed softly rather than blazed. Satellites ringed the planet, but they were spaced evenly, carefully. Defensive platforms were hidden among civilian structures, almost invisible unless one knew where to look. The ship descended. When the ramp opened, Aelira stepped forward alone, her long ceremonial cloak flowing behind her. Human air was lighter than Velkar air, warmer. It smelled of water and metal and something green she could not name. A group waited for her. No soldiers in heavy armor, no weapons on display. At the front stood a man in a simple dark uniform, Captain Elias Ward. He was taller than most humans she had seen in images, broad-shouldered, with short dark hair and eyes that did not avoid hers. He bowed, not deeply, but respectfully. "Princess Aelira of the Velkar Dominion," he said. "On behalf of Earth and its colonies, welcome." His voice was calm, not cold, not eager, just steady. "I am Captain Elias Ward," he continued, "your intended husband." The word felt strange in her ears. She inclined her head. "Captain Ward, I come as agreed." "Yes," he said, "and you are under our protection." Protection. Not custody, not supervision. That word followed her as they moved through the city. Humans stared, but not with hunger or fear. Curiosity, yes. Some bowed slightly. Others simply smiled. No one reached for a weapon. The ceremony was scheduled for 3 days later. Until then, Aelira was given quarters overlooking the ocean, not a guarded cell, a residence. Elias visited once each day, never unannounced, never alone without her consent. On the second day, she asked the question she had been holding back. "Why you?" He paused. "I volunteered." That surprised her. "You were not ordered." "No. Why would a human officer choose a political marriage with an alien princess?" He considered his answer carefully. "Because I believed it would work." "That is not a reason," she said. "It is for humans," he replied gently. "We don't believe peace happens by accident." She studied him. There was no arrogance in his tone, only certainty. On the third day, she asked another question. "If this marriage fails, what happens?" Elias looked out toward the ocean. "Then the war continues." "And if the war continues," she pressed, "what will humans do?" He turned back to her, his expression unchanged. "We will finish it." There was something in the way he said that word that made her spine stiffen. Not threaten, not boast, state. The wedding was simple. No throne room, no massive crowd. Representatives watched through secure links. Vows were exchanged under both Velkar and human law. When it was done, no cheer erupted. No victory announcement was made. Human leadership issued a single statement. The alliance was recognized and peace would be honored. Then they returned to work. That night, Aelira expected celebration. Instead, she found Elias reviewing reports on a data screen. "You are working," she said. "Yes." "On what?" "Logistics. For war. For everything," he answered. "Peace requires more preparation than conflict." She did not understand that, not yet. Days passed. Then weeks. Aelira was given access to human history, not a polished version, full records, wars, mistakes, near extinction. She learned humans had almost destroyed themselves before ever leaving their planet. They had burned skies, poisoned water, and still survived. They had learned to rebuild quietly, efficiently. She learned that human military doctrine focused on defense, not conquest. Every system was layered. Every plan assumed failure and planned beyond it. She noticed something else. No human spoke of revenge. Even when Velkar extremists attacked a human trade station on the border, killing dozens, the response was delayed. There was no fleet movement. No speeches. Then reports came in. The attackers' supply lines collapsed. Their ships lost navigation access. Their leadership was exposed for internal crimes. Their allies withdrew support. Within a cycle, the faction ceased to exist. No human claimed responsibility. Aelira confronted Elias that night. "You did this," she said. "We responded," he corrected. "You did not even declare war." "We don't need to," he said. "We prefer problems that solve themselves." She felt a chill then, not fear of him, but understanding. Humans did not rush to battle because battle was inefficient. They waited. They observed. They ended threats at the root. The Velkar High Council sent messages of concern, of confusion. Aelira did not answer immediately. She watched humans laugh, work, argue, forgive. She watched soldiers help civilians rebuild after storms. She watched children learn about wars not as glory but as warnings. One evening, standing beside Elias as the sun dipped into the sea, she spoke softly. "I was sent here to stop a war." He nodded. "You did." "No," she said. "I think I was sent here to see why it should never start." Elias said nothing. He did not need to. Above them, human satellites continued their silent watch. Around them, a world lived without fear, not because it was safe, but because it was ready. And far across the galaxy, empires began to understand something the Velkar were only starting to grasp. Humanity had not married into peace because it was weak. It had done so because it was strong enough to choose it. Princess Aelira could no longer see humans as fragile, small creatures, the way the Velkar had always taught her. Every day she spent among them revealed more strength hidden behind calm faces and polite words. But it was one thing to notice it in quiet moments. It was another to see it in action. It began with the border incident. A human outpost on the edge of Velkar-controlled space had been attacked. The Velkar extremists assumed they would crush it easily, believing humans to be unprepared and soft. Elira watched as news arrived in the palace. She expected panic. She expected immediate military mobilization. But there was nothing. No fleet warnings. No orders to engage. Instead, she saw calm preparation. Humans at the outpost were activating shields, rerouting energy, and securing civilians. It was precise, efficient, and terrifying in its quiet efficiency. She asked Elias how this could be allowed to happen without immediate intervention. "We always assess first," he said. "Every response is measured. Panic can be worse than attack." Elira did not understand fully until the reports came in the next cycle. The attacking fleet, arrogant and disorganized, had begun to collapse, not because of human firepower alone, but because their plans had failed internally. Communications were disrupted. Supply chains were severed. Leadership was exposed to rebellion. Systems they depended on shut down without explanation. The attackers' allies abandoned them, unsure what had gone wrong. By the time human reinforcements arrived, the fleet was in chaos, scattered and defeated before a single human ship fired. Elira felt a chill. She had been trained to think in fleets, shields, and weapons, but humans did not fight that way. They anticipated, manipulated, and dismantled threats before they could grow. They had mastered war without the need for war itself. She spent hours studying human strategies. She learned of layered colonies capable of surviving isolation for decades, of civilian infrastructure doubling as defense systems, and of military units trained to rebuild and adapt faster than any enemy could break them. Every document, every record told the same story. Humans survived because they were unpredictable, resilient, and patient, and they were merciless when pushed. She recalled a message from a rival empire, mocking humanity's small fleets and weak soldiers. Within days, the empire's outpost near a human colony vanished from all records. It had not been destroyed in open battle. Its internal power systems had collapsed, its leadership arrested by their own people, its soldiers stranded without coordination. The humans never even claimed responsibility. Elira could not believe it. The Velkar would have demanded tribute after a strike like that. Humans. They acted silently, then continued with daily life as if nothing had happened. She began to see why no empire dared challenge humanity. They did not attack because they feared destruction alone. They attacked and left destruction in their wake without needing recognition. The thought made her pulse quicken. She had always imagined the galaxy's strongest species as proud, towering, and openly dominant. Humans were quiet, subtle, and lethal. One night, as they walked along Earth's ocean side, Elira asked Elias the question she had been holding back. "Why do humans restrain themselves?" He paused, looking out over the water. "Because we can choose not to fight. We do not need to dominate. We survive, and that is enough." But if survival is all that matters, why intervene at all? "Because survival is meaningless if the universe forgets us, and because we protect what we love," he replied. Elira thought about her people, her duty, and the fragile thread that had brought her to this planet. She had married him to stop a war, to preserve her people. Yet she could feel the weight of something much larger. Humans did not just protect themselves. They protected life itself, not for glory, not for empire, but because they had learned the cost of failure. In the following cycles, Elira traveled to several human colonies with Elias. Every time she noticed the same patterns. The cities appeared peaceful, even ordinary. The streets were safe, the people polite. But underneath, there was a layer of preparation that no Velkar city had ever possessed. Every civilian had a role in defense. Every factory could pivot to producing military-grade supplies. Every soldier was trained not only to fight, but to anticipate the enemy, to think beyond immediate tactics, to act like the empire itself had been dismantled before the first shot. She watched as humans repelled minor incursions from rogue factions. Not with fleets or flashy attacks, but with precise interventions that left no trace of their involvement. The enemies themselves often collapsed from within, unable to withstand their own failures. Elira began to understand a terrifying truth. Humans did not need overwhelming power to win. They needed strategy, patience, and resolve. Her studies revealed why so many empires had avoided direct conflict with humanity. Stories told in Velkar history depicted humans as reckless fighters with little honor, yet these records were incomplete. The truth was far stranger. Humans could end wars without declaring them, dismantle empires without leading armies, and survive crises that would destroy older civilizations. They combined intelligence, adaptability, and endurance in a way no one had predicted. Elira herself became part of this quiet force. She worked alongside human engineers, soldiers, and leaders, learning their ways. She saw civilians train with methods that could defeat elite Velkar soldiers. She observed entire cities engineered to collapse safely under attack, only to rise again fully intact. Each lesson left her more awed and more fearful, not of the humans themselves, but of the galaxy if anyone underestimated them. Elias noticed her growing understanding. One evening, he said, "You see now why no one challenges us openly." "Yes," she replied, "but it is more than fear. They respect us because they know we can act without mercy if forced." "That is right," he said. "Humans do not seek glory, we seek survival. And we protect what must be protected. That is all." Elira had thought the marriage was a political maneuver, a simple gesture to stop hostilities. She now realized it was something far more profound. It was not a marriage to prevent war. It was a glimpse into the reason humans had endured while empires rose and fell around them. Days turned into weeks. Human diplomats and Velkar emissaries met, discussed, and debated. Every decision was quiet, careful, and calculated. Yet under the surface, the humans controlled outcomes in ways no Velkar or outsider could fully trace. They did not dominate. They prepared, anticipated, and acted decisively when necessary. During one inspection of a border colony, a small Velkar rebel cell attempted sabotage. Elira expected alarms, explosions, and a retaliatory strike. Instead, she watched silently as human forces neutralized the threat. The saboteurs were captured with no unnecessary destruction. The colony continued its routine as if nothing had happened. Yet internally, the human forces had dismantled every plan the rebels had prepared, cut off support lines, and ensured no similar attack could succeed again. She realized then that humanity's strength was in subtlety. Their victories were not announced with fanfare. They were recorded quietly, in reports, in archives, in the precise execution of their strategy. A war with humanity, she understood, would not look like war at all until it was too late. One evening, walking with Elias along a forest path near the colony, she admitted her thoughts. "I thought I married you to prevent war. Now I see that perhaps I married into a force I cannot fully comprehend." Elias smiled faintly. "And yet you came willingly." "I had no choice in the matter," she said softly, though there was no resentment. "But still, I cannot help but feel both awe and fear." "Then you understand us," he replied. "Understanding is the first step toward respect. The second is action." Elira watched as the sun dipped behind the horizon, the sky streaked with human-made satellites reflecting light. She thought of her people, of the Velkar Dominion, and of all the empires that had underestimated humanity. No one dared to fight them openly. Not because humans could not be defeated, not because humans were obedient or weak, but because humans had learned to fight wars without fighting, to dismantle threats silently, and to protect life with precision that was terrifying in its simplicity. In the weeks that followed, Elira continued to explore this reality. She accompanied human teams on inspections, watched civilians respond to potential disasters, and observed soldiers coordinate across vast distances with minimal communication. Every moment revealed a new layer of strategy, a new depth to their patience and resilience. She began to understand why Elias had chosen to marry her, not because it was politically convenient, but because it was necessary for her to see. The marriage was a bridge between worlds. Through her, the Velkar would learn a truth that would change their understanding of strength forever. Elira's admiration grew, but so did her sense of responsibility. She could no longer view humanity as a fragile species. They were far more dangerous, far more capable, and far more disciplined than any Velkar record had suggested. And she knew that if she ever needed to defend them, or even the galaxy, she could trust their methodical, precise, and unyielding resolve. She had married to stop a war, but now she realized she had married to witness a force that the galaxy had long feared without fully understanding, a species that could end conflict not by conquest, but by mastering it, and by choosing when, where, and how to act. From that moment, Elira walked with a new purpose. She was no longer just a princess acting as a peace symbol. She was a witness to human strategy, resilience, and the quiet, unstoppable force that ensured no empire dared challenge them directly. The galaxy might not yet understand it, but she did. And in understanding, she had found something far more valuable than peace. She had found respect, awe, and a new kind of fear, the kind that changes empires quietly, without a single shot fired. Princess Elira had spent months among humans, learning their ways, observing their strategies, and witnessing their quiet power. What she had once thought of as a fragile, chaotic species had become something entirely different in her eyes. Humans were not weak. They were patient, cunning, and relentless, but in ways that no Velkar or other empire could anticipate. Now she was about to see the final proof of why no empire dared challenge them. It began with a message from the Velkar High Council, a coalition of smaller empires, jealous of humanity's rising influence, had sent an ultimatum. They demanded that humans surrender control over certain star systems. Failure to comply would result in open war. Many Velkar leaders feared that this confrontation could ignite a full-scale galaxy-wide conflict. They assumed humans would be forced to negotiate, as all species before them had been. Elira read the message with calm. She already knew the outcome. She had seen human preparation, human patience, and human resolve. The council had no idea what it was asking. Elias received the message quietly. He called a meeting of human leaders, diplomats, and security advisors. No panic, no displays of military might. The humans debated options logically, mapping out every possible scenario and calculating consequences not just for battle, but for long-term stability. Every choice was weighed against survival, morality, and efficiency. Elira watched from behind, noting the precision with which humans coordinated. It was almost beautiful, like watching a great clockwork system, each gear turning perfectly in time. Every human spoke not from pride, but from knowledge. Every suggestion had a backup plan. Every concern was addressed before it became a problem. When the coalition fleets finally mobilized toward human-controlled space, Elira went with Elias to oversee the defense. She expected battle, chaos, explosions. Instead, the humans moved with quiet precision. Ships repositioned silently, colonies reinforced themselves with invisible networks, and civilian populations were moved to safe zones without alarm. There were no parades, no declarations of war, only preparation and execution. The first engagement occurred at a minor colony on the outer rim. Coalition forces attempted a direct strike, believing the humans to be weak and uncoordinated. Within hours, the attackers were isolated. Supply lines failed mysteriously, communications collapsed, and internal mutinies broke out among their own fleets. Human forces never fired a single shot, Yet the enemy's plan unraveled completely. Elira's eyes widened as she observed the outcome. She had trained for war her whole life, had studied tactics and fleets, and yet she could not comprehend fully how humans had done this without firing a single weapon. They had dismantled their enemy from within. Their victory was invisible, silent, and total. Elias explained calmly, "We do not need to fight to win. We anticipate, we contain, and we remove threats. By the time the enemy realizes they are defeated, it is too late." Elira nodded slowly, understanding dawning. This was why no empire had dared challenge humanity. It was not only their resilience or technology, it was their method, their patience, their ability to end threats without announcing themselves. As days passed, more coalition fleets attempted minor incursions, hoping to test human defenses. Each attempt ended the same way. Small mistakes by the attackers were magnified, alliances collapsed, and every plan the enemy tried failed before they could achieve anything. Elira realized that humans had mastered a strategy no other species had: to fight without fighting, to win without glory, to protect without revealing all their power. During one inspection of a strategic colony, she saw children practicing emergency drills alongside adult engineers. Entire cities were capable of transforming into defensive fortresses within hours. Civilians could manage communications, supply distribution, and even tactical operations in the event of attack. Every citizen had a role, every action calculated to maintain the whole. She turned to Elias, astonished. This is why empires fear you. Not because of your ships or your weapons, but because you can defeat anyone without showing your hand. Elias nodded. Humans survive because we understand the cost of war, and we act only when necessary. But when we act, the result is absolute. That is why no empire dares challenge us openly. It was not just military might. It was not just strategy. It was the certainty that any challenge would end with total failure for the enemy, without humans ever needing to prove themselves. Elira realized that humans had earned respect, not through domination, but through the mastery of restraint and the power of action when required. The coalition soon sent a full fleet to test humanity's resolve. Elira accompanied Elias as they monitored the situation from a human command station. The fleet expected confrontation, but what they encountered was precision unlike anything they had imagined. Supply lines vanished, sabotage crippled command networks, and internal discord spread rapidly among the coalition ranks. By the time human ships arrived, the enemy fleet was fractured, their leaders captured, and their systems exposed to rebellion. No human fired a weapon until the coalition fleet was already collapsing from within. The efficiency was terrifying. Elira felt a mix of awe and fear. This was not brute strength. This was intelligence, patience, and decisiveness. This was humans. After the last of the coalition forces withdrew, Elias stood beside Elira, his expression calm. "They will think twice before challenging us again," he said simply. "Yes," Elira whispered. "And now I understand. You are not reckless. You are not weak. You are inevitable." Elias smiled faintly. "We survive, we protect, and we choose when to act, that is all." Elira reflected on her own role. She had come to marry a human to stop a war, thinking it was a duty, a political necessity. Now she realized it had been more than that. She had married into a force that reshaped her understanding of power, strategy, and civilization. She had witnessed a species that survived, protected, and deterred without arrogance or violence. A species that could crush empires silently and rise above conflict with dignity and strength. In the weeks that followed, Elira began to work alongside humans more actively. She assisted in coordinating interstellar diplomacy, learning their methods of subtle negotiation, and observing how human leaders inspired loyalty and trust without coercion. She saw how humans balanced patience with decisiveness, how they protected life while maintaining readiness for inevitable threats. She also began to understand the depth of Elia's choice in marrying her. It was not only about peace or duty. It was about showing her and through her the Velkar, the true nature of humanity. It was a lesson in strength, restraint, and the power of survival without arrogance. One evening, as they stood together overlooking a human city, Elira spoke softly. "I thought I married to prevent a war, but now I see that I married to witness something greater." Elias looked at her, calm and steady. "And now you understand why the galaxy fears us." She nodded. She understood. Humanity was not loud. Humanity was not flashy. Humanity did not dominate or conquer for glory. Humanity survived. Humanity protected. Humanity chose to act with precision, intelligence, and decisiveness when necessary, and that made them unstoppable in ways the galaxy had not seen before. Elira smiled faintly. "Then we have done more than stop a war. We have shown the galaxy that there is a power beyond fleets, weapons, or empires, a power they cannot fight openly and a power they cannot ignore." Elias placed a hand lightly on her shoulder. "Yes, and now you are part of that truth." For the first time, Elira did not feel like a pawn. She felt like a witness, a participant in the quiet but absolute power of a species that had survived against all odds and learned not only to endure but to protect and prevail. Across the galaxy, empires took note. Diplomats and leaders whispered warnings, fleets hesitated, and plots were reconsidered. Humans did not boast. They did not claim victory. They simply continued their lives, prepared for anything, and watched quietly as the galaxy learned a hard lesson. No empire dared challenge humanity, not because humans could not be defeated, but because humans had mastered the art of ending threats before conflict could even begin. Elira stood with Elias, watching the sun set over human cities that gleamed with life, resilience, and quiet power. She realized that she had not only married a human to prevent war, she had married into a species that defined the meaning of strength, restraint, and survival. And in that understanding, she found a new respect, a new awe, and a new certainty. The galaxy had learned why no empire dared fight humans, and she would never forget it. Humanity was not loud, not reckless, not arrogant. Humanity was inevitable. She smiled at Elias. "I understand now. The galaxy may never fully see your ways, but I do. And that," he said, "is enough. One witness can change the rest." Elira looked out over the horizon. The stars above seemed smaller now, insignificant compared to the quiet, unstoppable force that humanity represented. She knew that the galaxy would remember this time not for wars fought, but for the peace that survived, and for the power of humans who chose to endure, protect, and act only when necessary. In that moment, Princess Elira realized she had not just found a husband. She had found the truth about a species that had survived against all odds, tamed chaos, and earned a respect that no empire would dare challenge. And she would carry that truth with her forever. The galaxy had learned a new lesson. The most dangerous force is not the one that seeks war, but the one that can end it completely and chooses not to. And humanity, patient, relentless, and precise, had mastered that lesson fully.